Right on time for the 8 o'clock live stream. How's everybody doing? Hope you're well tonight. You can hear in the background the clock doing the chirping. That's how you know we are right on time. In fact, this one will play a whole song for you. I always joked when live, being able to go live, first started on social media. You remember how there'd be these videos where someone would go live and then sit there and say, "Hey, everybody, yep, we're just going to give everybody a minute to get in here." Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, how you doing, Jim? Yep. Yep. We're just going to get started in a minute. Give everybody a minute to get in here. And you'd have to sit through that for like 6, 7, 8 minutes. I don't know if you remember that, but that made that whole deal just like terrible. Anyway, the live stream is working. I think it's the third one over. If you want to talk in the live stream, you can click on it and I'll see it in real time and we'll chit chat. This is episode number 5 of Sunday Night, Not Quite Live, in the third one where it actually is live. Welcome. Very glad to see you. I want to start with the important things, and that would be thanking those people who make the work that we do possible. That's what this live stream was born from. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to look at my phone just because that's where I keep my prayer list. And as always, I will protect your anonymity. But I'm going back to January 8th because we missed the live stream last weekend because of the snowstorm. And if you recall, or if you didn't get a chance to see, I said, hey, I owe you one. Let me put out a poll. Here's 3 options. You choose one, and whichever one you choose, I'll put up. So I had put like eat a habanero pepper, meet my kids. And the third one was there's a few churches that I'm friends with the pastors, and they will let me use their sanctuaries to practice preaching. And I do that just to develop my skill. And sometimes I'll record it. Hey, Connor, how you doing? Good to see you, friend. And you decided in the poll that you would like to see a practice sermon. They're very hard to hear in that church from the 1600s. That one happened to be on the Beatitudes. Anyway, we decided we would start doing these Sunday night lives. Every week we brought in $55 or more to contribute to the work of the ministry. Feels like that was a long time ago. It hasn't been that long, but I want to start by honoring those who make the work that we do possible. I'm going back to January 8th, 2 weeks ago, and bringing us forward. In the last 2 weeks, we have brought in $235. And we owe our gratitude to James S., Robert L., James F., Arlene B., Jerry K., and Angie D. You are on my prayer list that runs... you can't see that at all, can you, really? It runs all week, and as there are various things that come up that I have to pray about for various reasons, on here I pray that God honors your tithe and that money is used responsibly for our ministry. So there we go. Thank you. Please do continue to contribute to our work. It's getting better and better. And in part, it's getting better and better because of the great contributions you're making. The live stream is working tonight. It's the third one over. Just click on it, type, and I'll see what you have to say there. Want to share a funny joke with you. On Facebook, I belong to, I don't know, like 24 different Christian groups just started by random people. They're not official or authoritative. Dissent from Calvinism, Arminianism, evolution versus creation, oneness versus Trinity. I really like to see what people are talking about, what they have to say, what their ideas are, what people's responses are, any good apologetic stuff in there. And this one was like a general theology page, and they put out a poll, and the poll said, well, just trying to get a general idea of where the group is. So either or, are you more this or more this? But then the list of choices in the poll, there were 12 choices. And I said, you know what, doggone it? That's what's up with this digital Christianity that can make it so problematic. Is everyone wants to be a reformer of their own absolute truth. It wasn't, are you more either or, it was, which of these 12 choices are you, right? I just thought that was funny. I made a little TikTok out of it as a joke. If you're just joining us, we said an opening prayer in regard to those who have continued to fund the ministry, and shared a little joke about Facebook. I want to share something with you. A few weeks ago, I put out a video where I had, I think I did it on Facebook, where, big stack of Bibles, because someone had made a post that said, hey, does anybody even use physical Bibles anymore? Well, this week, I happened to run into, at work, a Lutheran chaplain that I know I'm quite friendly with. And I said, hey, can you get your hands on an NRSV for me, New Revised Standard Version? It just so happens it's one I don't have. Well, sure enough, that's what you do. You ever ask a pastor to give you a Bible, they're going to give you a Bible. So I was pleased to get a copy of the NRSV to add to my collection. Its wording's very interesting. I've been doing TikTok in the Bible on TikTok, and we're on day 3. And as you know, day 2 talks about the firmament. And in this NRSV version, it uses the word dome for rakia, the beating out, the sky, so it's a much clearer term. It's like, boy, had I had the NRSV a day earlier, day 2 of TikTok in the Bible, I might have used the word dome instead. So anyway, all right. So, something else. This week, I had the privilege of, with my whole family, doing this ministry in the region that I live in called Safe Nights. And it's been going on forever here. I've known about it forever, but I've never really participated. And what they do is it's a collection of churches that will allow people in the area that are homeless, struggling with not having anywhere to stay, no food, opens up parts of the churches for them to sleep. And they get their meals there, and they get to sleep there, and they get to, clean themselves there and get a place to rest. During the day, they go out and do what they're doing, but then they come back. And it was beautiful to, I wouldn't do anything more for my wife. She's really, in this regard, she's the one who takes our family out and kind of gets them doing stuff, and then calls me and says, hey, you should come. This is pretty good. I say, okay, I'll come to Safe Nights. I get there and I have a blast. It's this beautiful, charitable, effort-taking place where people who are down on their luck and homeless are being taken care of. So we decided that for our family charity, we're going to do this Safe Nights thing and kind of follow it around. And I'll let you know how it goes, but it's pretty cool. It's very cool. It gives meals and beds and warmth to those who need them most when they need them. And you can't beat that for Christian charity. You really can't. Boy, today's video, part 2. How you doing, Jeremiah? Nice to see you, Jeremiah Shine. Welcome. So today's video, why are there so many denominations? Part 2. We might all be heretics. Is it possible we're all heretics? Boy, did I literally take a baseball bat and just start swinging it around. I feel so strongly about it. I don't know if you got a chance to see part 1 and 2 of that, but I highly recommend it. Part 2, I got a little critical, but I feel like what I was saying, needed to be said. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later to give you more detail. So make sure you watch. Is it possible that we're all heretics? Part 2, why are there so many denominations? And the other thing coming up, the main video coming out this week, hanging in there. Awesome. Good, Jeremiah. Good to see you. The major video coming out this week is going to be Dead Sea Part 9, and it is on Armageddon, the book of war. And between that and this video I put out today, the truth is getting hard. I've always been one. My whole first mission for the first 4 years of this was truth first Christianity in a post-Christian country, separating the objective and factual from the subjective and traditional for the benefit of our faith. And we have this new life in our ministry, and we're saying narrative apologetics tools for post-Christian missions field, narrative apologetics tools for the post-Christian missions field. But the truth is getting harder to tell. The truth I told in the video today and the truth that I am going to be telling you in part 9 of the Dead Sea Scrolls concerns me. I feel like, you got to trust God, because I feel like, man, I'm going to lose viewers with this. Whoa, when you tell people this. And the reason why, many of you hang with me because you've gotten past that fear, right, of what's up with this guy? Why can't we find out what he is? Are you a Catholic? Are you a Protestant? Are you a Freemason? Are you a Jesuit? What are you? You know, I need to know what you are before I can listen. We've all gotten past that. And we understand there's a much bigger picture here and a much bigger thing happening, but not everyone does. And so I want your prayer this week because I'm scared about the video I put out today and Dead Sea 9 coming out this week on Armageddon from the Book of War and the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm scared because the truth is the truth. And the truth that I have to tell from the objective sources is going to be very shocking compared to what we have learned in the past regarding Armageddon. That's all I'll say for now. There will be other stuff coming out throughout the week too, but I would say that's the main work, the one that has gotten the bulk of the project time. On TikTok, I'm on day 3 of the days of Genesis with TikTok in the Bible. That will come out tomorrow. On Facebook, I was very blessed this week. I ended up sharing it on Facebook. I initially shared on YouTube. I'd initially only shared this little sermonette on Facebook about the desert and the wilderness. And I was wondering to myself if maybe we hadn't been, if maybe we shouldn't teach it a different way, right? I grew up on this idea that, well, they were made to wander in the wilderness because they disobeyed God. But is that the case? The deeper my prayer life gets, the more I understand the concept of a personal relationship with God. And the more I start to trust God. And the more it dawns on me that the desert is the perfect place for God to stick you when he is trying to teach you how to learn how to trust him. And that whole story, right? I wanted to talk about the desert and the wilderness because Moses went to the burning bush and what's your name? Right? If I go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go, they're going to say, who sent me? I am sent you, right? The whole point. I'm a living God. The living God sent you. And the living God destroyed the pantheon of non-living Egyptian gods and God's led his people free from Egypt, and he brought them through the wilderness to Sinai, to the foot of God's mountain, and they disobeyed him, and he made them wander, and we'd been taught this was about disobedience, and I realized, no, it's not. It was about God putting them in the most inhospitable place where they can't get water, and they can't get food, and God just saying, trust me, pray to me for it, I got you. God saying again, trust me, I got you. You have to learn to trust me. And when they'd get it right and trust God, sure enough, they'd wake up in the morning and there'd be manna. Or they'd get it right and trust God, and all of a sudden there's doves and they can eat. Or they're getting attacked by vipers and God provides the solution for it. But then there was that deeper level. Wait a second. Jesus spent time in the wilderness. He was in the wilderness for 40 days, just like the Hebrews had been in there for 40 years. So anyway, this little sermonette I put together initially on Facebook. And then on YouTube, I came over and I said, hey, loves, hey, my friends, my community, come on over on Facebook and check this thing out. And one of you had commented back, well, hey, not all of us have Facebook. So it's like, okay, you talked me into it. So I put it up on YouTube too. That's on also this last week's of work. On Parler, Twitter, I've been typing random little things. I don't have beautiful answers for you yet. I'm praying to God about what these things could be used for to further enhance our ministry. And I can't tell you I've come up with anything yet genius or useful. I did think that maybe Twitter would be a perfect one to ask people what they would like prayed for, right? Just Twitter, you get 140 characters. You're not having a deep conversation with somebody on that, nor should you want to. Talk about censorship. It's not them blocking what you say. It's you sitting there for an hour just trying to craft what you want to say with 140 letters. That is censorship. So maybe Twitter can be simple for this, for our work. Let us pray for you. Just give us one thing where we can pray for you. Maybe something like that could work. So it's something I'm thinking about. Patreon, we started about a week ago and we got our first patron. $5 a month. That's really exciting. It's exciting to get your first one because it says, yes, it's working. What you're doing is working. So I'm very excited about that. And so what I've been doing is putting up video material on Patreon. Admittedly, nothing different than what you guys are getting here, except I'm putting it on there for patrons only. Not everybody has YouTube, right? So that works. Yeah, upcoming this week, we talked about Dead Sea 9. Watch the video I put out today. You have got to see it. I want to go now and read. Hello. How you doing, Montgomery Skinner? Good to see you. I'm going to read from First Corinthians chapter 12. And I'm going to share a little bit about what I did in the video today. But you got to go watch that video. But I'll get into more details here where I can speak a little freer with a little more time. In part one of Why Are There So Many Denominations, the idea was psychological. We shared how, well, hey, people are wired differently. So psychologically, naturally, they're drawn to different types of worship. We had talked about cataphatic and apophatic. Some people are more head knowledge. Some people are more heart knowledge. That made sense. I'm sorry. We said speculative and affective. Speculative head knowledge, affective heart knowledge. And we had cataphatic and apophatic, a horizontal axis that talked about meditation and prayer. Well, today we got more into this, right? And the idea was, hey, I got this idea from somewhere, guys. It's in the Bible. So let me go to this passage in Corinthians. We are many parts. We are all one body. And let me show you what I think. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. Okay, let's start just with that. For just as the body is one, the church, the body of Christ, and has many members, people. The way we've interpreted this in modern society, members of one church, one congregation, one denomination. Susie's the one that makes the brownies. She's the arm. Joe is the foot. He's the one that's going to go out there and bring the people into the church. James is the ear. He's the one who listens to what's going on and always has the greatest advice to give. But that's not what it's saying. It's not what it's saying at all. What happens if member is all of a sudden denomination or sect? It would be right in line with what was happening at the time in first century Palestine. Christianity was nothing more than a Jewish sect. Look at Acts chapter 2. Early in chapter 2, in the verses, the 40s, it says they held fast to the apostles' doctrine. And later in the 40s, it says they went to the temple and worshiped every day. Well, what were they doing at the temple every day? Practicing Judaism. It started out as a sect of Judaism, right? And then it becomes something that expands to the Gentiles. And check this out, all in a short period of time. Jesus Christ is crucified. He rises from the dead 3 days later, spends 40 days with his apostles, goes to heaven. 9 days later is Pentecost. About 120 in the upper room, roughly. You've got the 11 apostles, Matthias, the mother, the 70. We know Acts tells us there's 500 living witnesses. So what? We've got about 720 there. And then we hear that Peter preaches Old Testament prophecy and converts 3,000. So we've got 3,700 Christians all in Jerusalem. That's it. There are no more Christians anywhere. And within no time at all, they've spread this faith throughout all of the Roman Empire. Now, think about what I just read at the beginning of chapter 12 there, right? Where many parts were all one body, right? One body is Christ, is the church. Many members, right? The analogy, your arm is a member, your leg is a member. Do you really believe that they went around to all these different countries where they spoke all these different languages and just preached a few things and everybody said, oh, you know what, God, all this time I thought it, I knew it. My culture was wrong. My everything I've ever done has just been wrong. You know, sounds like a happy jam band. Jeremiah. Yeah. A happy jam band indeed. So, I mean, think about it. It had to be, members had to mean something along the line of denomination, right? So now let's read a little bit further. And all of the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. Christ meets us where we are, right? For in the one Spirit, we were all baptized into one body. So yes, fine. The perfect example of this is Philip baptizing the servant of the Queen of Ethiopia. Somebody very different than himself, and the baptism occurs and the faith ends up back there. They didn't go back there and say, hey, let me preach Jesus to you, and then go, you know what? My culture's stupid. It's been stupid all this time. Let's just throw it away and take yours instead. No, Christianity was preached and became molded into the lives and lifestyles of all these places that they went. That's what's being said. Let's read on a little more. For in the one Spirit, we were all baptized into one body. That is the unifying factor. Yes, there is unity among us. Yes, there is one gospel to be preached. Don't get that twisted. Jews or Greeks, slaves or free. And we were all made to drink of one Spirit. Yes, whether you were a Greek or a Jew, whether you were a slave or a free, whether you were from Phoenicia, Mesopotamia, Carthage, Ethiopia. Yes, this idea we have today that it's talking about one congregation when it says we are many parts and all one body. Susie's the arm, Jim is the leg. No. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but many. If the foot would say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body. Well, that's the equivalent of your Arminian going, well, the Calvinists are wrong. They're not real Christians. They're not really saved. That's not what we're being asked to do. How do we know that's wrong? Because the very next passage after this goes into love. How do we love each other? How are we supposed to love each other to do this? Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but many. Because I'm not a hand, do I not belong to the body? That would not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear would say, because I'm not an eye, do I not belong to the body? That would not make it any less part of the body. Skipping ahead. As it is, there are many members, yet one body. There are many denominations, yet one body. If there is a universal church, it is that. Now look, that doesn't mean there aren't denominations that we don't all find wackadoodle. But we have to trust God. And as I've always said, you can't understand Christianity without factoring the sum of all of its parts. That is what is required. And I'll tell you why I come to this conclusion. Because it's one thing to only do this on social media and have a conversation with someone and have your book in front of you and be talking to someone you've never met, you don't know their background. That's easy to blast them. You're a heretic. Picture yourself going and standing in front of their congregation, a congregation of 350. And they're hosting something like Safe Nights on Thursday and AA meetings other nights of the week. And they're feeding the hungry. And they're standing in worship of God. They're singing out in worship to God. You stand up and tell them they're a heretic because they believe differently on a certain doctrine than you. You wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. You'd realize very quickly how wrong that perspective is. We are many parts. We are all one body. So then, how do we avoid conflict? Paul teaches us how to avoid these conflicts. He tells us to trust God. Let me read you a few passages from this book. Just Tell Me the Truth About the Future of Christianity. This was the foundation for the theory that I came up with that led to part one of why are there so many denominations? There's got to be one right? And then part two, which came out today, we might all be heretics. Let me read you a few things here. Hello there, Gamestrom, but what about real heresy, like denial of the divinity of Christ? Great question. Did you know this? Every single time there has been a heresy, a real heresy, even like that one, there has never been a time that a church council, which would be the authority where they would stand up and say, hey, you're speaking as a heretic. There'd have to be some authority involved. In the early years, they were ecumenical councils. Okay, we're here because of a heresy. You're saying the Son of God is not divine. You're a heretic. Never once in history has that group then said, oh, I'm sorry. We just didn't know. We had that one messed up. Our bad. We're going to come back around to your way of thinking. No, they just go form another sect and they survive. Eastern Orthodoxy, Oriental Orthodoxy, Persian Orthodoxy, all of these, notice Orthodoxy. They are Orthodox today. Never has there been a time that a quote-unquote heretic have we just never had to worry about again after the argument from authority about that heretic. We have to trust God that there is some purpose for them to do something they're doing. Of course, there are core Christian doctrines where you could easily argue from authority that someone is a heretic. For example, your example, divinity, right? Divinity is important, but it took them 300 years to define what that was. That doesn't mean the divinity wasn't there from the beginning. It means conversations went over a long period of time to define what these things were, what they meant, how we teach them. I don't know if you were here a minute ago, Gamestrom, but I pointed out that you have the death, 3 days later resurrection, 40 days with the apostles, 9 days later Pentecost. There's about 120 in the upper room when you add the 70 plus the 11 plus Matthias. Acts tells us there's 500 living witnesses at the time. Peter preaches to 3,000 with Old Testament prophecies. So with 3,700 Christians, they went from one area and spread it to all the different cultures of the Mediterranean and the Roman world in less than 100 years. And it interwove with all their different cultures and languages and everything, and questions arose about how we do this. That's why it took so long, right? The questions about the divinity of the Son didn't start out as, some type of evil intention. They started out as good questions. Well, is Jesus, if Jesus is the Son of God, is he co-eternal with God? Does he always lived with him? Is he co-equal with God? Right? These very legitimate questions, and questions about the divinity of the Son weren't even settled at these church councils. Like I said, the heretics, quote unquote, continued to thrive. They went north. They converted barbarians, the ones in your specific case about the divinity of Christ. Right after the Council of Nicaea, when this is allegedly decided and orthodoxy is going to be consubstantial with the Father, right? Homoousia, same substance as God. Well, within days, it was converted back the other way, and back and forth and back and forth. So the point is this: some of these things may very well be heresies, but we have to trust God. We have to trust that God has a purpose for these things. How do we know that every time a heresy doesn't come up, it's not for the purpose of there being a teaching tool? How do we know that the people that Arius and his ilk that were teaching to in the barbarian world of time didn't need to hear it that way for it to make sense to them with their pagan religions? Orthodoxy to one is heretical to another. That's the lesson there. Hold on one second. Love others as if they were ourselves. Yes, right. What about your own divinity? Here, I want to, Gamestrom, a few of your questions are going to be answered here. Let me just jump around a little bit. Proof that not only did Christ intend potentially for there to be denominations, but that good modern pastoral care can rise above petty differences in denominations to aid in meaningful sanctification. Look at the logic behind one denomination trying to uphold a truth claim over another. For the sake of understanding, assume that both denominations are groups of believers, okay? They have slightly different beliefs, whatever, okay? Let's call one denomination accuser and one accused to set up this scenario. It's an all too common scenario, and it means the accuser believes they have a clear revelation from God and an absolute understanding of truth, whereas the accused does not. For example, the accuser believes that Jesus Christ will return before the Great Tribulation to rapture all his followers to be with him in the clouds. The accused believes Christ won't come take up his followers until the end of the Great Tribulation. What's essentially being said? My subjective view is more true than your subjective view. Or even worse, I believe my subjective view to be objective reality and yours is wrong. Do you see these traps that this age of moral relativism has stuck us in? So where do we turn for trust? Well, we say the Bible, right? The Protestants give us the doctrines of inspiration, inerrancy, and infallibility. There's a lot of comfort in that. On the Catholic side or the Orthodox side from around the rest of the world, you would have something like a magisterium, which is the same type of belief, except that it's done by consensus of council instead of the writings of some individuals, right? But ultimately, it's trust in God. Remember the last Dead Sea video, part 8? Part 9 is coming this week on Armageddon from the Book of War. Part 8 was the Book of Secrets about wisdom. And it said wisdom came by revelation and not reason. I think it's prayer and trusting God. And let me show you where Paul tells us that. So we set up that scenario. We see that scenario. The accuser judges the beliefs of the accused. The Bible, however, doesn't give authority to a believer to judge bodies of believers with whom they disagree to any meaningful consequence or conclusion. There's no mechanism in the Christian faith that would allow this to happen. When scripture speaks of bewailing false teachers or wolves in sheep's clothing, it's a call to protect one's personal self, not an explanation of how one should take authority to determine perceived views of others. You see what I'm saying? Philippians 3:15, therefore, as many are mature, have this in mind, and if anything you think otherwise, God will reveal even this to you. If we're backed up by scripture and we have a sincere prayer life, God, as we all know, will reveal truth to us. He does. He always has. Always has. Let me go on. So James and several other apostles that have been with Jesus literally continue. We talked about that part. We talked about Acts chapter 2. It would not have been uncommon for James or Jerusalem Christians to continue proud. Sectarianism or denomination were common among first century Jews, with examples like Essenes, Nazarites, Zealots, Pharisees, and Sadducees. I'd probably write that a little different now after having read the Dead Sea Scrolls by Wise, Abegg Jr., and Cook, but I think it's okay. There was a precedent for sects to exist in the greater framework of Judaism, and it happened in early Christianity. Peter seems to be the first strict Jew to come around to Paul's framing of the gospel. Peter's transformation within a short time. The diversity among sects was absolutely stunning. In fact, I think I make a list of it somewhere here. Hold on a second. Oh, I do. Please give me a second to find it. Don't go anywhere, anybody. La, 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 la. I'm not going to fill it up with empty words. I'm just going to ask for your patience. I know I've got this great list in here that gives us... Oh, where is it? Okay, here we go. Within a short time, though, the diversity among sects was absolutely stunning. Yet each of the New Testament writers still emphasized unity without worrying that differences would impact the faith. They did not think of sect in the same way Christians do today. There were not complicated frameworks as would be constructed in later centuries that would impact the varieties of people practicing the faith. I mean, just take these few examples here. Jewish people practicing Christianity, Gentile people practicing Christianity, Jewish people converting to Gentile Christianity, Gentile Christians converting to Jewish Christianity, Gentile Christians converting to Judaism. The list could be endless, you see, and all these sects would still somehow be involved in Jesus and his movement. The list could be endless. These facts about people in the Bible crash hard against modern biblical practices in American churches. Frankly, no American churches actually teach full truth from full New Testament because most denominations are trapped by narrow definitions. The same thing happened in the early church, right? But good intentions, right? Good intentions. Nobody intended to negatively frame the church. Naturally, the gospel is truth. We would want the truth to be out there as strong as possible. But when you're taking a faith that has spread through countries and nation states and languages and cultures, and you're trying to create terms that can be defined and used to teach these, that's how you're going to end up with all of these different doctrinal ideas. Perceived views of others is a deep rabbit hole. It's a hurdle, but freedom for all is stronger. I think chapter 12 of First Corinthians is saying precisely that freedom for all is stronger. And those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor. And our less respectable members are treated with greater respect. Boy, that sounds a lot like Matthew 5, the Beatitudes, doesn't it? Whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior member, that there may be no dissensions within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. Change the word to denomination. If one denomination suffer, above elite, we're in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 right now. Now, you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leaderships, various kinds of tongues. All are apostles. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you a still more excellent way. There is no way he's talking about one group of people with one set of beliefs right there. He is saying Christianity is the tie that binds all the groups of people with all the different beliefs. And now he's going to show us still a greater way. Here it is. You ready? Love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbals. And if I have prophetic power and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. So how are we supposed to treat those other people who claim that they're Christians, but don't believe in the divinity of Christ? You don't have to agree with them. I think some are wackadoodle too. And we treat them with love. Let me catch us up here. Without worms, soil is sterile. Yes, true that. A lot of Protestants make fun of Catholics when things go wrong in the church, when really we should be praying for each other. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And here's the part that blows my mind on the Catholic Protestant point. We're cut off the same cord. It's not just Catholics and Protestants. We forget that Christianity is 2,000 years old and it's all over the world. And it has been through 2,000 years of calendar changes and cultures all over the world, and different types of beliefs and different standards and different ways of thinking, different types of orthodoxies. We're not the only ones. This first world post-Christian view we have of Christianity totally ignores an entire world of it. I like to make this point. In Sir John Glubb's The Fate of Empires, it's this small 30-page essay written by this guy who fought in World War I, where he thought he had kind of pegged the life cycle of a civilization. And he says they're about 230 years long. And he talks about every major civilization: Rome, Greece, the Ottomans, the Mamluk Empire, all of them. They all last about 230 years. Well, if Christianity survived for 2,000 years, and we've had however many civilizations could be had in 230-year cycles, well, we've had a lot of cycles of Christianity, haven't we? There's way more to this picture than we get. That's the thing. That's why we have to be able to look at it fully openly, without the narrow view that one type of denomination might give us. Now, why would we have a denominational view? There's a couple very good reasons. Again, always good intentions. Family. Fear. If the beliefs aren't the way that I've learned them, I can't. I just can't, because the potential's there that it's not real. And then, oh my gosh, what would I do? Think about people 50 years ago who would go their whole life never knowing there wasn't anything but Christianity, compared to the kids today in the digital world who grow up knowing there are religions all over the world. That's why I say narrative apologetics for post-Christian missions field. Why? Because we have to say something different. We can't say, well, no, the God of Islam is different than the God of Christianity. We have to smack the holy book of every type of civilization that ever existed in a pile, and then put the Bible there and say, well, here's the deal. None of these books make these claims. This book makes these claims, and when you put them to the test, it passes them. So, okay, come with me. Here's a field, my friend. You see all the rocks in it? We're going to flip over every single one and find out what's true. So far, I can't find a single thing that discredits the one we have. You see, it's just harder for them today. So we have to be able to rise above the view of denominationalism in order to succeed in spreading the gospel. It's a movement again. That's the beautiful thing about today, is I'll tell you that. Many members, one body, like Ephesians. Yeah. In fact, Ephesians is a great example, because Ephesians essentially is specifically Paul trying to teach this idea of living in Christian unity, right? Different people, different groups living in Christian unity. And they weren't always good to him. He stirred up a lot of stuff there. He ruined the business of the silversmiths, right? All that stuff happened. But he was essentially teaching the unity of Christianity when you're bringing all these different sectarian ideas together. Look, you can still have Christianity here. Here's how it would work. Great point. What is your take on, since there are many denominations, we agree to disagree on things certain biblically, or should we all agree on everything? Well, Paul talks about this, and I talk about it in part 1 and 2 of these videos. I think we, first of all, have to agree to disagree on certain things biblically, and we can. First of all, there's a category that exists, adiaphora, doctrines of secondary importance, not essential for salvation. They're all over the place, right? Secondly, there are primary doctrines. but denominations twist up the meaning of them accidentally all the time. It just happens with time and practice. It's not purposeful. There's not a conspiracy for it. So our aim should be just like it said in Corinthians. In 12, he's saying, we're many parts and all one body. Your hand, you can't look at your hand and say, well, I don't need you. And you can't look at your foot and say, well, I don't need you. I might not know why I need you, but I need you, right? Because we are all one body. We're all brought into one body, the body of Christ, right? Doesn't matter what we are. Doesn't matter what our denomination is. The salvation in Jesus Christ is what matters. There will be denominations always, forever. There always have been. It's a unity that comes through Christ. Christ represents the unity, not the ecumenism of denominations coming together, right? That's a big difference. What is your take? Since there are many, we agreed. Yep. None of us really can judge any other believer's place or position. It's clearly spoken. Judge. All right. It's all right, Josh. Let me go on with this one. I'm not cringing my face at you. I'm cringing my face because of the way